In this video, we're going to do a sample problem where a scenario is provided to us and we have to find the independent dependent variables, and we'll make an observation table as well to record our data. So you want to determine if drinking more coffee will help you stay up longer. Your guess is that the more cups of coffee you drink, the longer you can stay up. On day one, you drink 1 cup of coffee and stay up 1 hour later. You also feel dizzy. On day 2, you drink 2 cups of coffee and stay up 2 hours longer and you feel jittery. And on day 3, you drink 3 cups of coffee and you stay up 3 hours later and you're bouncing off the walls. So take a look here. You're trying to see if drinking more coffee will help you stay up longer. So what are you changing? Well, you're changing the amount of coffee you're drinking. You're drinking 1 cup, 2 cups, and 3 cups. So that would be your independent variable, the number of cups of coffee or the amount of coffee, because you're changing that. Your dependent variable, that's what you're actually measuring. So you're trying to see how much longer you stay up. Number of hours awake or up. There's different ways you can word it, but be specific. So for example, if you just said coffee, that would not be specific. You'd have to say the number of cups of coffee or the amount of coffee, because it could be temperature of coffee, flavor of coffee. You'd also have to say, hours. Well, what about hours? Hours awake, hours asleep, you have to be more specific. So your guess is that the more cups of coffee you drink, the longer you would stay up. And so as you can see, you have 3 cups of coffee, you stay up 3 hours later, 2 cups 2 hours later, 1 cup 1 hour. So yes, the guess was correct. We say yes, it was correct, or yes, it was supported. And we'll learn why we use that word later on. So what you can do to better analyze this, though, because it's kind of tricky to read these paragraphs all the time, is you can actually put this into a data table. And so data tables are always created in a similar way. There's a title, and then there's your columns. Your title is always something along the lines of the effect of your independent variable on the dependent variable. So you just change whatever your independent variable is for that experiment here, and your dependent variable for the experiment there. If you have many tables, you'll usually write table 1.0, or if it's your second table, table 2.0. So for this situation here, I would say table, let's say it's my first table, table 1.0. I'd say the effect of amount of coffee, that's my independent variable, on number of hours awake. You might also say sleep schedule, that's also acceptable, or sleep in general. So now in the columns, what do you put? Well, you put your variables. So in column number 1, you put your independent variable with your units, if there are any, your dependent variable in column number 2, and other observations in column number 3. So your number of cups of coffee is your independent variable. And so in the paragraph, we had 1 cups, 2 cups, and 3 cups. So we had 1, 2, and 3. And so cups, right? So here we don't really need to put a unit, but if there was, we'd put a unit in brackets. We'd put, for example, milliliters if it was the amount, if we were measuring that. And now here, in our second column, we put our dependent variable, which is the amount of hours awake, or number of hours awake. Number of hours awake. Now I wouldn't put the symbol number there. I would actually write the word number out. And so if we look at our paragraph, it says you stay up 1 hour later. It says you stay up 2 hours later and 3 hours later. So we could write 1, 2, and 3. Now in your third column, you'll usually put other observations. Now you wouldn't write other observations. You'd be more specific. So for example here, maybe how you're feeling, I would put instead of other observations, right? So notice that both of these in a sense are dependent variables, but it's just this one's more qualitative over here, how you're feeling, whereas this one's more quantitative, how many hours more you're awake. So you usually have in this column your independent variable, in this column your dependent variable, and in this column a dependent variable as well. It's just this one is more quantitative with numbers, and this one's more qualitative with words and descriptors instead. So we can look at the descriptors. It says on day 1 you felt dizzy. On day 2 you felt jittery. And on day 3 you were bouncing off the walls. So notice that that's an observation table, and observation tables are always made, like I said, in a similar way. You always have the title on top with a similar format like you see here. Just replace your IV and DV. You always have the first column being your independent variable, second column being the dependent, more quantitative, and third column being the dependent, more qualitative. So other observations that you might notice, and you can be specific with those titles. Make sure you do include your units as well in each heading. And that's basically how you make an observation table. It's how you identify your independent and dependent variables. In the next video, we're going to take a look at control variables in some more detail, and we're going to do a scenario where we do the same thing that we did in this video, where we identify the variables, but we're going to focus a bit more on control variables. So you can look ahead, you can read up on control variables, and then you can try out the scenario, and in the next video we'll take up the solution.